Good. Another Nam Academy video. So, we are going to talk today about the daily practice and just a little analogy, a way of thinking about the daily practice. It was a massive storm that hit Calgary just recently, and I was staring out the window at the tree outside of my office, and like the wind was blowing and the tree was like leaning. It wasn't just leaning though, it was leaning and it was moving like this. So even in the midst of stress, it was kind of ebbing and flowing. And so I encourage everybody to sort of observe nature, because a lot of stuff in nature is a good sort of I just chuck these out. Maybe this one looks better. Nature. So the subject that I kind of thought of today would be nice is kind of routine in recovery. This is good for families to understand. It's also good for patients to understand. It's good for everyone to understand. And so why is routine needed? Why do we need structure in our day? And what's the benefit of structure in the day? If we don't understand this, we start to look at our routine as a chore, as something that we just do. We do it without any practical benefit of it. And so, the reason we do it, fundamentally, is the same reason why, you have the tree, right? So you have kind of the floor, you have the tree, it's a pine tree, so it kind of looks like this. And there's a lot of wind coming. And I encourage you to actually look at how trees, they behave in weather. You can learn a lot from a tree. A tree is a great Zen master. And here's what the thing is the tree doesn't stand still. If you look outside, there's not much of a breeze, but is the tree still? It's not still. It's kind of vibrating a little bit. And how is it vibrating? It's doing the same movement again and again. Every branch. It's swaying, but it's the same movement. It's the same character of the movement. And when the tree gets under high force of the wind, it's tilted for sure, but it doesn't stay still. It's continuing to do this. Why? So the reason is that movement back and forth, that rocking, it actually helps stabilize the system. It kind of bends and then it reverses. Because if you think about it, if all it ever did was bend, it would basically keep bending until it broke. If we had a solid wall with as much mass as a tree, it could not be as big or tall. The wind would mow it down very quickly. It would take... the reason is because a wall is rigid. It just holds. It doesn't absorb or give back. It doesn't interact with the energy of the environment. And when we don't interact with the energy of the environment, we can take it until we break. And that's what people do. They take stress and they look stable like a wall, but a wall only looks stable until it breaks, and then it breaks big. It doesn't break little. It lets loose. And so nature in its wisdom, in the structures that it designs, it uses this concept of movement to dissipate energy. it uses this kind of ebb and flow to dissipate excess energy. That is a threat. Because when winds are blowing really, really strong, that tree, right here, is under tremendous pressure. If it's not flexible, it will break. But because it kind of plays this game, this up, down, back, forth, it pushes a little bit and then it springs back, pushes a little bit, it springs back. Because it does this thing, because the wind never just blows forever. The wind blows and then it lessens. It blows and it lessens. And life is like that. Whether it's wind, whether it's stress, there's very few stressors that are unrelenting forever. They ebb and flow. If we meet them with an ebb and flow, if you talk to a boxer, we have a boxer in the audience, so if you talk to a boxer, they're not standing on their heels, because if they get hit, it's going to hurt. They're on the balls of their feet and they're rocking. Because if you take a hit and you go back, it doesn't hurt very much. But actually, you use that hit to then spring you forward to punch. It's very natural. And because you're taking and giving, you can stay in the fight a lot longer. When you stand still, rigid in your life, you don't have a flexible approach to your day-to-day life, you will absorb all the energy without giving any of it back, and it will break you, and it breaks people. That's why you go to drugs. That's why you go. You take it until you can't, and then you break. So, a lot of times in recovery, sometimes we developing a playful relationship, what we call a playful relationship with the environment, where you interact with it. I talk about this in one of the stress lectures, but actually cultivating a relationship where you aren't afraid of stress. Just like the trees, they're not afraid of the wind. They grew here. I mean, they grew with the wind. If they didn't like wind, they wouldn't have grown. They use the wind to their advantage. Much like, actually, you may not know this, but forests, especially these pine trees, they need forest fires. If forest fires didn't exist, these trees would not be here today, because their pine cones actually burn at very high temperatures, and then they become they can actually become seeds that can grow new trees. Without the fire, it wouldn't. You can plant a pine cone all you like; it won't grow into anything. You need extremely high temperatures to take some layer off, and then it can grow. So forest fires have been around a long time. They're not a bad thing. Bad thing for some people when they built their city or their place around. So I advise caution with that. But the thing is it's fundamentally not bad. Stress is not bad. Destruction isn't bad. Some things in life need to be recycled. Sometimes you need to leave the job. Sometimes you need to make a change of the scene. If you develop a rigid relationship with your life and you are unchanging, and I know why you do it. You do it because, trauma, programming, all this stuff, there's a certain very narrow way of being, so you avoid all triggers. That's why you become rigid, is because it's the only way. This contortionist weird pose is the only way, just right, to kind of exist outside of being triggered. Except this isn't a very good posture when someone punches you. this is your spine's out of whack, you're gonna probably break something. So you live in a cave, you stay isolated, so that there's no risk of someone punching you. But that's not living. Lots of people live this way. I was talking to someone, especially with this like metaverse. Holy crow! There's so much ability just to escape from reality, unplug from reality, and just live in this imaginary world, Facebook, whatever you call it, and just spend hours. That's why. It's because that's safe. But if you want to make the real world safe for you, you can learn a lot from a tree. A tree in the wind, look at that tree. Just if you actually like carefully look at a tree, like just look at the dance. If you have a tree next to you right now, just look at the dance of the tree. Just notice how the whole organism is vibrating, all in different ways. Together, some parts are moving together, some parts are moving different. But the tree, that's what we're doing with the environment. The better we do that, the more playful our relationship with our environment. I have a talk that I say, don't take yourself too seriously, because you are absolutely you're not in control of much. You think you are, but you're not. And the world will break you until you realize that. And some people die realizing that. Lots of people die realizing that. So the key, and why I bring this back to routine, what is it? What's that back and forth thing that you do? Because the tree has a structure to its dance. It's not uprooting and shifting and dance. It's not jumping. That's not its nature. It doesn't jump. It has a certain mechanic. It has one point of contact. That point of contact is repeated multiple times inside the tree that governs what it can do. And within the constraints of that structure, it moves and it has this dance. So we say routine in recovery because your day has to have a routine. Inside that routine, you can accommodate ebb and flow. If you have no routine whatsoever, you are like a leaf, that's like kind of just like flying in the wind, right? No agency, no control, no nothing. And so the daily routine, so getting up, making your bed, you have the stuff you do at work. Yeah, there's things outside of your control. What happens at work? What do you do? There's things inside your control. So the tree has these natural biologies, and it can actually hinge on those and shift. A human has so many more choices, though. A human can do anything. But if you create reliable points of contact that are the same no matter if it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, if you're a churchgoer, I assure you church is not just for Sundays. That's a mistake to think that. Every day needs to have its routine. This will form the hinges of your connection with reality that will allow you to dance with reality. When you have a routine, the stronger the routine, and it'll evolve in time. You'll go through shifts. You'll do more sometimes, less other times. But when you have a daily practice, you will be able to absorb things. So if it's stress, you'll have an existing structure that you can strengthen. You can maybe do 5 more minutes of meditation that day. You always make your bed. So even though your mind is messed up or you're stressed out, you make your bed. That becomes a staple, an anchor. If we're not anchored, then we're flying out of control, no agency. But if we're anchored, and a tree is fundamentally one thing, it's always anchored. A tree is always anchored. That's the only reason any of that beauty is possible. A human without an anchor is a human that's going to be traumatized again and again and again. What's the anchor for a human? It is routine. Routine anchors you to reality. And reality, no matter how much it changes, a routine will allow you to ebb and flow. So if you set aside 5 minutes a day, and no matter what, you always put in that time every day. And if it comes at the expense of sleep, if it comes at the expense of being late, you always spend those 5 minutes. Then what will happen is your mind, recovery will always be anchored at some level in your life. So when stress comes, lots of wind comes, you have something that can move back and forth. A smaller tree can't handle as much force. Bigger trees can handle a lot more force. And so the longer you do your recovery work, the more branches you get, the more connections you have, the more adaptable you become. The more deeper your roots go, the more force you can withstand if you do the development. But if a tree just grows into a very big long pole, it will almost undoubtedly, pound for pound, right, because surface area and stuff, it won't be able to handle the amount of tensile force as a tree with lots of branches. I say pound for pound because we have to compare things, apples to apples. If you have no branches, you have less mass, so then obviously there's less to push. So I say pound for pound because a wall as big as a tree would not be nearly as high. And so the longer in your recovery you stay, you go to a meditation retreat, you learn some stuff, you add another branch, you go into a religious kind of thing, you learn another thing, and some things, they branch off to others. So over time your recovery practice will grow, your routine will grow. The very first anchor is creating the time and space for a routine. So we say to every human, especially men, but women too, clean and make your bed. Always. Let that anchor you. Let that basic organization anchor you. Make 5 minutes for mindfulness. Make 5 minutes for journaling. 5 minutes for anything. Anyone can do 5 minutes. And then your anchor will grow, and your ability to take force from the universe will grow. And hey, stress, the yogi would always say, I love stress. I eat stress for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. And I use it, I don't just deal with it, I use it to grow. Think about that. The thing about stress is, and really what this is about, right, the back and forth motion, what that's about is stress and relaxation. Stress, relaxation. Stress, relaxation. Out of that, day, night. There's all sorts of polarities repeating again and again. What happens is the tree grows. The longer the polarity reverses, the more it grows. The more time it happens, there's no reverse growth going on. It's very important to understand that principle in recovery. That's why stress, don't change the perspective of stress. Triggers, change your perspective of triggers. Stop living in avoidance of triggers. Look at triggers as opportunities, as where you can grow more deeply. I love being triggered, honestly. I didn't always love being triggered, but I love being triggered now because every trigger gives me a clue. I can add it to my ardas, my prayer. Help me with the roots of wherever this came from. I don't know where. I thought I'd done a pretty thorough job, but clearly I missed something. C'est la vie. I wouldn't know that but for the trigger. So you get stressed out, change how you think about that. You do IOP, now you got some tools. What boxer would get any better if he didn't or she didn't fight? Why look at a fight as kind of a bad thing? It's not a bad thing. There is growth in coming face to face with stress and eating it, winning. Every win, you get stronger. The tree, it consumes the energy and then it gives it back. It says, win, doesn't matter, I'm giving a little bit back to you. It's not a loser. A tree is not a loser. Losers are people who just keep taking and they keep losing. Every loser has the choice to become a winner. Conqueror. Conquer your stress. Don't run away from stress. And so, to do this, you basically just need to create some structure in your life. If you have no structure in your life, you will have no anchor on which you can begin this ebb and flow relationship. So you develop this by developing a daily routine, and you will become like a tree, and over time you will evolve your practice. Today we talk about journeys in recovery. Fundamentally, journeys in recovery are just like a tree growing. It learns, it grows bigger, it gets more nutrients, it gets more things, it becomes more stable. Before you know it, it's 100 years old, majestic, beautiful. And everyone wants to be like that. But not everyone gets to be like that. You have to work at it, one day at a time. But the work is very simple. It's just day, night, stress, relax, and that builds the vitality. So that's kind of the subject today. How does it do that? We talk about that lots in other parts. Your routine, in the midst of your routine, your triggers will become apparent. You'll cry, you'll laugh, you'll start expressing. But as you start living as a less rigid human being, you'll also start shifting who you interact with. And you'll notice trees grow in forests. They don't do, like that tree is alone right now. It doesn't, that's a very human thing. That wasn't like that. Some person probably planted that tree. Trees grow in forests for a reason. They're healthy for each other. Like trees grow with each other. And a forest together can withstand a lot more force, can't it? Because the front trees absorb more force, so the back trees don't have to. Every forest has its weak trees too. So we say connect to self, connect to others, create a forest with you. And then it's, the wind of stress. If you have a buffer in front of you, it's not as bad, right? If you have a bunch of buffers, maybe this tree dies, maybe someday you're the buffer. So I'm a big fan of metaphors. I do look to nature often, and I encourage you to do that. Look to nature for the answers to your problems. And I think you'll find that there's a lot of wisdom. So I'm going to pause it right there. We will start with you, sir.
Routine is a big one. I'm off work right now on long-term disability, and I'm struggling day to day with, I don't have a structure, I don't have an anchor. I know work was that anchor, but I try to come up with things during the day to make as much of a routine as possible, but it's being off work on long-term disability is almost counterproductive because I don't have that daily routine. I have so much time in the day and not enough to do that it adds stress just by the fact that I don't have a way of creating a routine. There's a lot of hours in the day that when you're not working, they're there to fill.
Yes.
So yeah, that was just my comment. It's hard to create a routine when you have a lot of time and you're not working.
Yes. So the fundamental question here, or the comment, relates around, you're a lot of people, they come into recovery when when something in life breaks down. Oftentimes a job, disability, something prompts a break from what we call forced structure. So a lot of people, jobs give them structure in their life. Humans as a whole do better when we have structure. When that structure is internally driven, i.e. you generate it for yourself, it's different than when it's externally imposed. And so a lot of people live in a box created by others. And so long as they're in there, and they're held to a timetable, a schedule, accountabilities, deliver this, do that, you're paid this, it creates that structure. And it's actually quite genetically programmed. You have hunter-gatherer kind of behavior. That this is what people do, especially men. They need that objective to do for a day. So what do you do when you are not, when you lose that? So let's say it's a job that you're not able to go to, or you're not able to do that. And the sustainable recovery that's going to anchor you to reality, ultimately, there's no easy answer. All we can do, if this one is externally imposed, then internally we have to impose our own routine. That's called recovery. That process of moving from this to this is called recovery. It's full of blocks. Now that's why it doesn't happen easily. When we, all our lives are used to, a lot of times, it's related to upbringing. If your whole life you were externally given structure, we continue to look for that. It's not just a Freud thing, right? Women marry their fathers, men marry their mothers. This kind of concept. It's not like, it's true. It's not entirely wholesale true. There's complexity to that, but it's absolutely encoded. And so when those patterns don't serve you, and they break your life, or they break your ability to manage stress, then a renaissance has to happen, a renewal, a revolution. And that process of learning to self-impose your routine, create your own structure, working towards that, you will have to heal a lot of traumatic blocks. You'll have to change. That does not happen overnight. It's a journey. So we start with one thing. Everybody can do one thing. You can make your bed, or something like that. If you have a cat, you can feed your cat. A lot of people, they keep animals for that reason. They give them something to do, something to externalize. You know, when you keep a cat, it's not quite internally driven. Now the cat's going to whine, it's going to bark at you, or like, cats don't bark, but it's going to meow, you know, and you can't ignore it. Or probably won't ignore it. So, sometimes when recovery is so low, and we really are at this point and we just got broken and we're really fresh, we need programs. We need something like IOP, for example. We need clubs. We need something. We can sign up for things. Fitness classes, gym. Early in recovery, you need more structure. You need more people. This is why we say connect to others. Because they will give you the containment. They will substitute that external structure. And if those people are in recovery, they will hold you accountable. So you join, you know, like you join a gym. There's programs inside a gym where, you know, someone's going to be like, hey, you weren't there last Saturday. What happened? And to avoid hearing that, you'll show up. You'll develop a hobby. All of these things, no one just gets to internal driven. No one just suddenly becomes, oh yeah, all right, Dr. Gill told me I need to anchor myself with a routine. Okay, 2 hours a day, I'm going to do it. No one gets to that. It's done one little step at a time. But the thing is everyone can take a step. And the only one who can know what that step is you. What if work is no longer an imposed routine on your life anymore, what are some steps you can take? Signing up to a program is an example of one. What are more? Always in the back of your mind thinking, okay, I need to impose my own structure. All right, one thing I do every day is I make my bed. Good. I wonder what else I can do. I can challenge myself. Okay, maybe I'll clean my room. Maybe I'll vacuum every day. Get good with that. Trees, look at how they grow. Grow a plant, you'll see a little thing. Offshoot. Time elapses, right? Matures, consolidates, gets rid. Then another one comes. This isn't sexy. I'd love to tell you, hey, here's a pill. It'll give you a routine. I'd be a trillionaire. Or a trillionaire. If I could make a pill that could give you that, it wouldn't be worth anything. Because the reason, we have to understand the reason why this is difficult is because of trauma and encoding and blocks. That's why if you attend a program, so a lot of people, they go, okay, let's go away to treatment center. A lot of family members, send my loved one away, he needs to go to treatment. Lots of good things about treatment, but I assure you, after 3 months of containment, it doesn't get fixed. It gets started. And then the work after coming home, that's why I always recommend at least 10 to 12 weeks of treatment. Because it takes you 2 weeks to get comfortable, enough to do anything, and then takes you 2 weeks to prepare your exit. So these 4-week programs, I wouldn't spend a lot of money on that. I apologize if I offend someone. But so 10 to 12 weeks, at least you have a good 4 to 6 weeks of actual work, where you can prepare, you can learn stuff, you can do stuff. At NOM, our housing programs are open-ended because of that. People need time. And they need a gradual easing of external structure. So initially, you need a lot of outside structure, and then there is a transition in between this, where maybe some outside structure, as you make your own box, but some inside structure too. And where you're lacking, there's a little bit more. It's a transitional state in chemistry, we call it that. A chemical reaction, A plus B, often makes some weird Frankenstein thing that holds for a few nanoseconds, and then it changes to the final product. So the transitional state, that's a mix of connecting to self and others. And everyone can do something. So there's no easy answer to that question. But and some people, they need meds to kickstart it. They're just so unmotivated, they can't even eat. Okay, you need a med. Something to just kickstart the system. I'm not anti-medication. But a med won't do it for you. But it can help you get unstuck so that you can make your bed. At some point, you're going to have to learn to make your bed. At some point, you're going to have to learn. So it's an excellent question. It is the panacea question. And my answer is the best I got, which is, it is a journey. I'm still journeying in that. I get lazy. And on those days, I have people in my life that, hey, where are you? So then it helps keep me going. And jobs are absolutely a part of recovery. So at some point, it involves part-time work, right? You got to feel productive. It happens quite intuitively. Opportunities come if we just take it day by day. If we just ebb and flow. What do I got to do today? Don't think about tomorrow. This is today's stress, today's thing. What do I got to do? Plan out your day, schedule. Schedules are great. I have a talk, I think it's a job, on schedules in recovery. So the thing is, it's totally possible. It does take time. Miracles happen all the time in this work. I'm always amazed. Don't know why, because it happens all the time. But I still continue to be amazed. Good question, longer answer. Keep it coming. What else? You had a comment? Please, go ahead.
Sure. Dr. Gill, you said before that women have a higher EQ than men. I'm wondering if that has to do with the idea of a tree in the forest. I've always sort of thought of myself as the lone tree, and I don't need the forest. But when you have to connect to others, you have to be part of the forest. Are women just more intuitively better to live in the forest? Is that why they're part of the reason why their EQ is higher?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think if you go to evolution, women's emotional intelligence is higher than men, so that's no question. In yoga, women, they say, are 16 times more intelligent than men. Sometimes I meet men who kind of deride their wives as unintelligent, and I tell them, you do not know the amount of intelligence beneath that she's hiding from you. So the thing is, it's true. It's true when you define intellect in terms of intellectual, logical, get things done, and living in the environment. So women very wisely, so women are tasked with childbirth, rearing. They're genetically, they have to sort of be more capable of that, and as a result, there's one thing that's true of survival. Your odds go up in a community, don't they? When you have more than one person. But then, if you have more than one person, you need to be able to sort of sense the needs of the others, reciprocate. My wife she's taught me lots about EQ. My EQ is low. My wife's EQ is very high. Giving gifts. I don't think much about gift giving, but she's taught me lots about how a gift. She even said, why do you give money? Why do you give gift certificates? Because they're going to use it and then it's gone and there's no memento. Give something that will stay forever, that they'll put on like a shelf, and then they'll think about it. They'll think of you. What a fantastic way to build community. So why do women do that more easily? These are the basic building blocks of community. These are the basic, the way of sensing intuitively the needs of others is a crucial part of living in a stable life that has a greater likelihood of, making it in evolution. So it kind of makes sense, right? If evolution selects for people who are going to have a certain characteristic that increases survival odds, the Siberian tiger isn't with us anymore. The Neanderthal line died out. right? Because it didn't have the dexterity of the fingers. It didn't have enough fingers. So adaptation, and in the realm of communication and interacting, women do it better. And so that's not to say men are useless. Men have a different purpose. So there's, it takes, one thing I will say is we all need polarities. Learning to appreciate the polarities of life versus struggling against the polarities of life, looking for like, I'm better than that person. I like day, I don't like night. I like winter, I hate the summer, right? Where we sort of seek to dwell in polarity, it doesn't serve you. And so you need an ebb and flow. In yoga, they teach that every man and woman has male and female energy. And so there's a lot of diversity even within the genders. So not all men, some men will have a higher sort of emotional intelligence than others. Some women will have a lower emotional intelligence than others. It takes a village. It takes a forest has all types. It doesn't just have pine trees. There's other kind of plants and stuff. And we kind of all need each other. So you ask a question that's kind of nuanced, but I hope that answers it. So, one principle though is if you lack something, hang out with people who have it. So that's a basic principle of recovery. If you are uncontained, like you just can't stop talking about random things, you can't hold yourself back, hang out with people who will contain you. You may not like it, but when you hang out with people who will contain you, meaning who will give you structure, who won't let you talk forever, you will slowly learn how to express. If you're super rigid emotionally, hang out with people who are a little bit more flamboyant. They'll give you characteristics, they'll teach you things. So that's kind of one of the ways that community can help you heal. I remember before I did a lot of my yoga thing, I was never into dancing. I would always tell people, you know what, I just don't like dancing. I barely danced at my brother's wedding. The reality is, I had a huge block around self-image and around comfort with people seeing my expressed creativity. And so that was the real reason why I didn't like dancing. But you know what? In yoga teacher training, part of the thing was to just dance like a fool inside the class. And so we did that. We did that a bunch, and now I'm able to dance. I don't mind dancing. I'm not very good at it, but it's. But a lot of my self-image things also got there. So to go to the earlier question, right? If you can't do the routine, those things, working on those blocks. If it's hard for you to make a bed, everyone has something in their life that's hard for them to do, even though they know it's good for them. Working on that, really working on that, studying that, looking at that, will actually unblock you not just there, but in a lot of areas of life. It's worth your time. Learning to plan a schedule and adhere to it, even if you are used to having other people tell you, it's worth your time. Because unblocking that won't just give you a schedule that you've kept, it'll give you everything else. So everyone has unique blocks in their life that are holding them back. And so by doing and it may not look like recovery, like for example, artwork, making a painting. I think that's dumb. Examine that. Because when you can figure out how to make and express yourself in that art piece, you'll not just have an art piece, you'll actually have a whole lot of brain function. You'll probably pop a bunch of blood vessels open. It's worth your time. That's why in recovery we oftentimes give right brain exercises. Because it's worth the time. We find it very efficient. I always say, learn to dribble with your left hand. It's uncomfortable, but by learning to become ambidextrous, or able to use both hands, you can actually increase your brain function, because by activating the left hand, you activate the right brain. And even the parts that are not relevant, they also get fired a little bit. Because the brain does that. So then you can actually strengthen and balance your mind. That's why we like martial arts. Martial arts builds both sides. So that's a bit of a meander, but I thought that was important. Other questions, comments? ਹਾਂਜੀ
ਥੋੜਾ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਚ ਕਰੂੰਗਾ
I can translate.
ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਰੂਟੀਨ ਰਿਕਵਰੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰੂਟੀਨ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ ਨਾਰਮਲੀ ਵੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਰੂਟੀਨ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਵੀ ਆ ਅੱਜ ਆਹ ਕਰਨਾ ਆਈ ਮੇਕ ਮਾਈ ਸਕੈਜੂਅਲ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁਣ ਮੈਂ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਡੇ ਦਾ ਸਕੈਜੂਅਲ ਐਵਰੀ ਡੇ ਬਣਾਉਂਦਾ ਤੇ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਕੋਈ ਸਕੈਜੂਅਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਪਰ ਕਈ ਵੇਲੇ ਉਹ ਰੂਟੀਨ ਤੋਂ ਅੱਕ ਜਾਂਦੇ
Yes.
ਮਨ ਜਿਹਾ ਕਰਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਨ ਉਹ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਐਵਰੀ ਡੇ
Yeah.
ਉਹਦੇ ਲਈ ਕੋਈ ਇਲਾਜ ਦੱਸੋ
Yeah. So the question is a great one. It's a great question. So he's talking about how over time he builds schedules every day for himself, and it helps. But sometimes we become tired of the same routine. And fundamentally, this is a very common thing that happens, where people we want something new, something different. And that's very childlike. What that means is children are like that. If you give a 4-year-old a ball, he'll play with the ball, or she'll play with the ball, and then lose interest in the ball. An adult can play with that ball a lot longer, make rules. There's many things to do with a ball that are a lot of fun. If your nature is to become tired of routine, that's your block. There is endless variety. If you find the right routine, like for example, meditation. Oh, I get tired. The internet's full of these sort of mindfulness apps. You know, I want to go on a walk through the forest today. Tomorrow it's like a guided thing in the ocean. It's all good. I'm not saying it's bad. It's not bad at all. Something's better than nothing. But if you keep doing it, what you'll find is you get tired of it. The closer you get to exploring your innate self, your innate nature, the more satisfied you'll become with the things that you do. So if you can become comfortable in boredom, you know, one of the biggest triggers is boredom. Why is being off a job so hard? Boredom is one of the, and then your brain starts going. But if you can push past that, find productive things to do that you don't get tired of, and inevitably the things you won't get tired of are the things that don't fire dopamine, the huge high rates. So if you watch a Netflix show, it fires your dopamine really high. These are engineered that way. You'll get tired of it because your brain will adapt to the peaks of the dopamine, and you'll need more and more intense peaks. So then what they'll do is they'll end the shows with a cliffhanger. You know, like, oh, what's happening? Then you want to watch the next one. They do that on purpose because they give you a surge of dopamine, just like a gambler is not addicted to winning. Obviously not, because they don't win very much. They're addicted to the moment just before they find out. It's going to be good? It's going to be good? They're addicted to that, what's going to happen next. That's novelty seeking. And if you're doing something and that's happening, chances are what you're doing may not be for the right motivation. So if you're going to volunteer and you're going to meet new people all the time, versus volunteering just to serve and be at peace with that, you'll get tired of it a lot faster if you're going to meet new people, because at some point there ain't no more new people. You've talked to everybody in the temple. But if you go to just enjoy service, and you begin to enjoy the act of giving someone else pleasure when you give them food, for example, you can do that a lot longer without getting tired. So changing routine, sometimes it's the wrong routine. Sometimes your motivation is diseased. You know, you like to exercise because you like to go in front of the mirror and you like to look awesome. That gives you a rise. but then you get old, and then your muscles sag. Exercising doesn't feel as great. Whereas if you go, you like the feeling that you get of feeling vital, and you enjoy that, well, you can enjoy that as you age. You can do that a lot longer. The motivation as to why you do something has everything to do with the fatigability. So it's called fatigability. That's a muscle term. But that also applies to our routine. So if you do things with the wrong motivation, you'll get more tired of them quicker. That relates to dopamine cascades. Okay, G?
Thank you, Doctor.
I have maybe one or two more questions. Hands up. Any other comments, questions? Talked a while. Routine in recovery. It's a mundane subject, but it's actually all important to the practical application of recovery. So, thank you.